Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm here with Scott Oppmann from Esri, Steve Grise from Vertex 3, and also on board we got Mita, who's standing by, ready to take any of your questions. So please feel free to use the question interface there to ask Mita any questions along the way. This is actually going to be Mita's last webinar, is it not? Yes, she gives me the nod. Okay. You can talk too, you know, Mita. All right. Scott, you guys want to say hi, and Steve?
Hey, I'm Scott Oppmann from Esri.
Steve Grise, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are.
Okay, thanks, guys. All right, so let's just look at the agenda we're going to be covering today. First off, if any of you tweeters are out there, there's your hashtag and a couple of accounts you can tweet. And we're going to be going through a brief introduction to safe software and the FME introduction. And then Scott's going to take over and talk about the local government solution. And then we're going to pass it over to Steve Grise. He's going to look at getting the data into the solution. And we're going to follow up with some resources online and what SAFE's been doing for Esri here with some with a demo and just a few workspaces that we're looking at. And Scott's going to be involved there with speaking about a couple of other workspaces we're working on. And then I'll close out with some housekeeping, and then we'll have a questions and answers at the end. So I should also go back here since my screen has been paused, so I've been told. Thanks, Roger, for that. Hopefully everybody can see that now. Mita's on board. Let's skip to our agenda. So there's the agenda that we were just talking about. And now let's get into the introduction to safe software. So we're about 95 employees here in just outside of Vancouver in a place called Surrey. We've been around since 1993, and we were originally founded by Dale Lutz and Don Murray. We have thousands of customers around the world. Just a note that our involvement with Esri has been around since 1996 in various ways, assisting on pro services projects amongst other initiatives. And since about 2005, SAFE's been providing the FME technology for the data interop software. Okay, so just a little bit of introduction to those that may not be so familiar with the FME technology or the Esri data interoperability extension. They're in essence the same tool. They both can be used to accomplish what we're going to be covering today, really migrating or moving your data to the local government information model. So in this screenshot here, we see what that interface looks like. On the right-hand side of this, you're seeing how you get to it through the data interop within ArcGIS. And as you can see from the screen there, it's really a graphical authoring environment that we're utilizing here. So you can basically connect to your source data, drag some transformers, these blue objects that you may or may not be able to see very well, onto the canvas to manipulate the data, the source data, into the model you wish. So we'll see a little bit more of this a little bit later on. And just to underscore, what we have with the FME technology, Safe Software provides the FME workbench, and the data interoperability utilizing the FME technology is available from Esri. And we can see here over the past few years what we've been doing. We've got, if you were using the data interop in 931, you're based on the FME version. That would be the same as having the FME desktop for 2009. And then, as you can see down the list there, we got 10.0, which is based on 2010, and then 10.1 is based on FME 2012. The examples we're showing you today are going to be based on the 10.1 data interrupt, which is the FME 2012 technology. Okay, looks like we got our first poll question coming up here. So I'll launch that. Everybody hopefully is ready to go on this. And the question is, are you currently implementing ArcGIS for local government in your organization. So we'll just give everybody a few seconds to launch that. I've just launched it, so you should see that on your screen now. So yeah, we got about 30. Well, it's pretty near split between yes, already implemented, and then not no, but thinking about it, and then 7% not, have never heard of it. That's staying pretty steady. So just a little bit less, 40% now. We got about 80% voted there now. So I'm going to close that. Thanks everyone for taking the time to answer that, and I'll share that. So we can see here now we got. We've got 39% saying that yes, they already have implemented it, and then we got 52% showing that they're thinking about it, and 9% never heard about it. So that's going to be great for Scott when he fills in on that. So that's a great segue into what's this all about, and that's where we're going to get passed over to Scott. Oops, I gotta hide my poll. So this is we're going to pass over to Scott. So what do I want to know about the ArcGIS for local government? So Scott, I'm going to make you presenter here. You're all set to go, are you?
Yeah, I'm ready to go as soon as you make me presenter. Let's see.
All right. You should have presentation control momentarily. Has that worked? You seen anything there?
I don't see the ability to share.
There we go. Now you should. Sorry about that.
Yep. Okay. All right. Okay. So you guys can see my screen okay?
Sure can.
All right, great. So thanks, Steve. Let me just give a brief introduction. My name's Scott Oppmann. I'm part of a small team in Esri Software Products Division that's responsible for the ArcGIS for Local Government solution. And today I just want to give you a quick overview of the work we've been doing and how you can use it to begin to add value to your ArcGIS implementations. And let me start with just a quick overview. We get this question a lot. What is ArcGIS for local government? Or maybe put another way, what are we referring to when we say ArcGIS for local government? Well, really, ArcGIS for local government is the ArcGIS system. It's the desktop, mobile, and web software that many of you are familiar with that helps you create, visualize, manage, and analyze geographic information. And that system's constantly evolving based on enabling technologies, user requirements, and feedback we get from the community as a whole. And today that system includes software, online services, and maps and apps that support the implementation in your organization. And today we're going to talk a lot about the series of maps and apps that we call ArcGIS for local government. And you'll hear us refer to these as solution offerings with the ArcGIS for local government system. And so that's what I really want to focus on today is the maps and apps that we provide as part of ArcGIS for local government. So ArcGIS for local government includes a series of useful maps and apps that are focused on the work our local government users do. That could be an editing map that helps them manage site addresses and road center lines in their community, maybe a mobile mapping application that runs on a tablet PC or other mobile device that helps field workers in a water utility get access to water, sewer, and stormwater information. Or it could be a public safety common operational picture that's running in your emergency operations center during Homeland Security or other events in your community. Or it could be something as simple maybe as a land records public access application that provides property information to citizens on a mobile phone or tablet device or even a desktop PC. So they're very focused applications organized around the work you do in your local government. And you can deploy an individual map or app to meet a specific business need in your organization, or they're organized into modules, so you could maybe modernize a land records, all of your land records, maps and apps, and address your data management workflows, your citizen engagement workflows, and even some of your operational awareness workflows. Each of the maps and apps are extensible and configurable, so you can configure them to meet specific needs in your organization, and they're a foundation for our partner solutions, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So one aspect of our work is to provide a set of very focused and useful maps and apps that help you be productive with the ArcGIS for local government, or ArcGIS platform. But the other thing is to begin to curate an online community where we can work together, Esri and local governments and the partner community can work together to share best practices and implementation support as well. So it's the community, It's the useful maps and apps that extend the platform. And then it's also a network of Esri services and partner offerings that help you implement, sustain, and enhance the maps and apps that we provide for your organization. So many people ask, why are we doing this? So, what are we trying to get at, and what challenges are we trying to address with the ArcGIS for Local Government solution? And we've talked to locales all across the country and the globe, really, and found that many jurisdictions are facing very similar or common challenges. Most in this day and age are resource constraints, and that could be something as simple or as pragmatic as budget constraints and staffing constraints. But they're also bound by some other constraints in the organization, whether being asked to do more with less, and at the same time their technical environments getting more and more complex, so the technical resources they have in their organization are asked to address all kinds of platform needs, software needs, and development needs. And the interesting thing about local government, at least what I find pretty interesting, is that the domain expertise that's required to implement GIS in local government is really diverse. And you could start off your day in the morning by talking to the assessor or appraiser about property value information. You could then go to a meeting with the sheriff or your police chief and talk about how GIS could be used in public safety needs or law enforcement needs, and then just end up the day maybe meeting with your public works or health department, talking about GIS applications, for water, sewer, stormwater, or even well and septic applications. And so you're asked to have a real wide depth of domain expertise as well as part of your team and as part of your implementation. So there's certainly the resource constraints we've heard from users, but we've also seen that many of them are struggling, with just supporting the existing systems they have. Over the years, they've developed a series of custom solutions, and migrating those solutions and keeping them current with existing technology is one challenge, but also adapting those applications that have grown up over time to today's new information user that really sees their iPhone as their Uber app, not a single web browsing application, is really important and a real challenge for many of our users. And finally, they're all being asked to share and collaborate more and make the content and the applications that they have easier to discover, make them more usable, and then ultimately more relevant for information users in today's day and age. So our mission's quite clear. We want to make it easier for our users to deploy ArcGIS and help them deliver applications quickly throughout their organization. We want to help them stay current with future releases of the ArcGIS platform and other technologies and avoid challenges with legacy technology implementations. We also want them to help them create a platform of geospatial data that can be leveraged by many in their organization. So it's really to unlock the information they have so it can be leveraged by knowledge workers and others in their inside and outside their organization. So that's one aspect of it, but the other aspect is obviously to begin to address a lot of those common constraints we're seeing in local government, the size and skills of staff, and the budget and time available to implement. And ultimately, we recognize, Esri can't do this on its own. It's all about empowering the communities that contribute. So we want to build that sense of community and that really build kind of the three-legged stool that's Esri, users, and partners all working together on some of these common problems in a local government. So if you think about it from a kind of a classic way we used to think about deploying GIS, and many of you are familiar if you've used our ArcGIS platform, if you're using our ArcGIS platform today, right? We provide desktop, mobile, server, and online technology I mentioned, and that addresses your general needs. And if you're thinking about the project you then have at hand, right, you've got to look out across the industries and say, okay, what does the industry do, and how can I begin to incorporate industry-specific needs, and then begin to address the specific organizational requirements in my organization. So what we want to do with ArcGIS for local government really is consolidate or collapse the work you have to do on your project and reduce the time and risk and cost associated with the deployment and maintenance of GIS. And you still have work to do, right? You still have to take the focused maps and apps and this harmonized information model we'll talk about in a little bit and configure it to meet specific organizational needs in your city, county, or other jurisdiction. And you still have the same ways or mechanisms of doing that. You have the staff and skills. You can do it yourself. You can buy third-party apps and use that to close that gap, and then ultimately you could also hire consulting services to do that work. But ultimately, as I said, we just want to make it easier for you to deploy and maintain it going forward. So we don't have time today to necessarily go through all of the maps and apps that are available as part of the ArcGIS for Local Government solution, but I wanted to take you guys to the Resource Center and show you how you can discover those on your own and begin to participate as part of the community. So what I want to do now is just jump out here and go to the Resource Center. And if you haven't been to resources.arcgis.com, you can get to the ArcGIS for Local Government Resource Center just by clicking on Local Government here under one of the popular communities. And you'll be taken to the ArcGIS for Local Government Resource Center and the main landing page here. And I just want to highlight a few key aspects of the Resource Center. The first thing you'll notice is that there are a series of featured stories here that provide you some more information about the solution and how it can help you in your organization. You can also dive into specific topical areas or functional areas within your local government and begin to see how the maps and apps we provide as part of the solution can help you do things like find the proper, provide an application that helps citizens find a polling place or perhaps publish election results. And we'll talk more about these later today. So you can think about this kind of collectively if you're responsible for GIS across all these domains, or you could just come in here and dive in and find very focused content for your specific need. As I scroll down the main landing page here, you'll see a couple key things. Here's a banner that includes the 25 most current maps and apps that have been published in the gallery, and you can quickly use that to discover what's been added in it recently. You'll see there's blog posts, Twitter feeds, forum posts, and other featured videos that really help keep the ongoing dialogue within the community open and provide a sense of place for local government users to come and get help with best practices and implementation support. The other thing I'll point out is there's two other key areas now on the Resource Center. One is there's a new online help system that's available for the ArcGIS for Local Government maps and apps, and that's you can get to it here directly from the Resource Center. And also a whole section for partners as well too. And I won't talk too much about that, but obviously, as I mentioned, partners are a key part of this initiative. So I want to just dive in here real quickly and show you the expanded gallery and show you how you can begin to kind of discover the maps and apps that are available for local governments across the ArcGIS platform. So, I come into the expanded gallery here, and there's a couple different ways I can begin to find content. I could just simply search for things that are important to me. And maybe type an address here and filter the content for just maps and apps that help me with addressing applications. Or I could begin to use these simple filters on the left here and maybe look for addressing maps and apps that are available for the 10.1 platform and contributed by Esri. So there's a couple key ways you can do that. Once you discover the application that's interesting to you, you can just simply click on it and you'll be taken to arcgis.com here where you can read more about it. You can actually use a try it live version for all the web applications. So one of the key things you could do is begin to use these try it live versions of the applications to socialize them with key decision makers in your organization and just use those as a way to drive consensus on the implementations in your community. And we provide with all of these sample data from a couple different communities. So once I get to the item in arcgis.com, I can, as I said, I can download or use the Try It Live, but I can also then just go ahead and download the content that's available, and this will provide for me the application I just showed you there that you can configure in your organization. It'll provide you a copy of the local government information model that you can then use as a target for your data, and then some sample data from either Naperville or Bloomfield Township, Michigan, depending on which map or app you're using, that you can use to get started. So we try to provide you kind of a complete package that you can use then to configure in your organization and begin to think about how you could migrate your content to the solution and begin to leverage the maps and apps that are available on the Resource Center. So you can go back to the gallery here, and at any point in time, you can just kind of use this to filter and find content that's important to you. So let me just wrap up here before we with a couple other key points. So as I mentioned, we're focused on providing a whole series of maps and apps that are organized around specific workers in your organization, and that's really how users of your system gain value from your GIS platform. But the important thing to point out is that really ArcGIS for Local Government is a complete solution, right? Or all of these maps and apps work together in a comprehensive solution for your local government, and that solutions kind of founded on this centralized information model we'll talk about, and some standard base maps that help you produce some high-quality cartography, some common feature map services, and ultimately these focus maps and apps that are used by workers inside your organization and citizens that they interact with. So many have asked us, how do we begin to configure and use the ArcGIS for Local Government solution? And we've seen a series of patterns, or three kind of key patterns, evolve over the last couple of years. And how you begin to leverage these patterns depends on a couple factors. What your strategy is for adopting COTS or configurable solutions, the deployment time and time available you have to implement solutions in your organization, and ultimately your technical expertise. And we've seen three patterns evolve, really. One is folks that have just completely adopt the system. Others may use it as a publication environment and push data from their production systems to this model and begin to wire up the maps and apps. And finally, a third group of folks who really just like the apps as a good code sample and want to just customize it against their current implementations. And we really encourage you to start with the business requirements, not the geodatabase. Even today, we're going to talk a lot about getting content into the information model. It's really important to start with those business requirements in your organization, align them with the maps and apps that are available, and then ultimately begin to think about how you can take advantage of some of these configuration patterns that are available. So let me just close with a little more detail on these configuration patterns. And the first one that I mentioned is this complete system adoption. So we've seen many cases, like the city and county of Denver, who use this approach to modernize their parcel maintenance workflows, where folks just want to use a fully supported implementation of our platform, and they leverage the solution in its entirety. So they start by organizing their data and configuring the information model to meet the specific needs in their organization. And when they do that, they can simply then just configure the maps and address some of the issues they may have with scale dependencies and label expressions, and just configure the maps to work with the out-of-the-box information model that's provided. And then ultimately, they can quickly configure either the desktop editing workflows, mobile or web apps to leverage the content that's provided. And so as you begin to think about this complete system adoption, the important thing to point out here is as you begin to leverage more and more of the underlying information model, the time it takes to configure the maps and deploy the apps gets simpler because the time is less and it's simpler to deploy because it's all designed to work together. The other interesting thing to point out about this is a fully supported implementation approach by Esri Support Service. So if you get stuck, you can contact Esri Support and they'll help you through that process. So the next pattern that I mentioned is very similar, except you're really thinking about the information model and kind of the solution as a publication environment, and you're pushing data from your current production systems into that publication database, and then the steps that follow, configuring the maps and wiring up the applications, is essentially the same. But you'll have to develop these ETL scripts and make sure that you're keeping those things current as future versions of the information model evolves. And we've seen several communities across the country, like the city of Baltimore, who's adopted this implementation because they have mature systems and they want to leverage either the web applications to provide additional services to their citizens, or maybe even the mobile applications, but yet don't want to disrupt their data management workflows as a whole. And then the last one I'll just touch on briefly is that there are several folks that are out there that are using these as just good code samples, and they're configuring the maps and apps or the maps against their information model. Maybe they're leveraging some of the maps and just wiring the maps up to their data schema, but ultimately they're using the applications as good code samples and they're customizing them to meet their needs in their organization. And the one thing to point out is that just keep in mind that this is a challenge because obviously this means that you'll have to support those customizations and those configurations going forward. And we release every quarter. We're releasing new content on the Resource Center, and we're providing updates that help you stay consistent with future releases of ArcGIS. And it's just one of those things that you'll have to continue to think about if you do use this configuration pattern going forward. So I'll just wrap up, with a little bit about this information model, which is really, like any other system you buy and procure and deploy in your organization, really the underpinnings of it. And this information model is a little bit different than the work we've done historically at Esri on data models. It isn't necessarily everything and anything about local government, but really what it reflects is the known requirements of the maps and apps we have available in the solution, and it continuously evolves. It's easy to adopt and extend, fully documented, so you can begin to dive into the model and see exactly what's contained in each feature class and the fields that are part of the model. And it's organized around access and maintenance patterns, so you can begin to think about how you can provide access to certain elements of the model itself. We use a couple key tools to help us document, and I'd encourage you to look at them, to help you deploy the model in your organization. And that is Esri for ArcCatalog and ArcMap. And obviously today we're going to talk a lot about how safe FME and data interop can help you migrate content into that model as well too. So that's all I have, and I think we're going to turn it back over to you, Steve, and we can obviously take some questions here in a little bit. Let me go ahead and stop sharing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I think I can take back the presenter there, Scott.
Yep.
Save you. Yeah, great. Okay, so no, I hope everyone that's listening there can understand the value there that of the local government information model and the maps and apps. So now we're going to change gears a little bit. I'm going to take presenter rights there, so I hope everybody's just about to see my screen. And now you should see we got let me just go back to presentation. What's going on? Okay, that doesn't want to disappear. So we got another poll question we're going to pop up, and a little different interface for me this morning, so I'm just fluffing about. So I've launched that question. Everybody should be seeing that now. What version of FME and data interop are you currently using? So I suspect there'll be still a fair number on 9.3, and there could be others that are going up. So this is also, you could be using FME, you could be extending your ArcGIS environment with FME. So it's a pretty good split. We're seeing probably heavy weighted towards the FME 2012. So we got 37% in that realm. Yeah, so that's great. So we got 14% on data interop or lower. So just wait for a few more seconds to see if we can get a bit more of the audience to vote in. Okay. So yeah, we got 22% of the crowd that's still not on data interop or FME. So I'm going to close that now. Thanks everybody for taking the time, and we'll share those results. Okay, so we can see there from our results we've got a few more using the FME desktop environment versus the data interop, but if you add the data interop up, we're pretty well even across there with the 2012, and we got some on the FME 2011 and lower, so that's nice. And 22% are using neither data interop or FME. If you're using something else to load the data, the information model, that'd be great. You can question that to Meta there, just so we understand who's using what. So I'll hide those results now. Now we're going to change gears, and we're going to look at some of the work that Steve Grise has been doing, or at least his trials that he's gone through getting data into the information model, and just trying to load data to the solution. So Steve, I'm going to make you presenter. You're there now?
I think it's coming through. I think
I'm just about to make you presenter, so you should be getting a prompt about now. You have control. So I see your screen.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Good. Okay, well, just wanted to help transition from what Scott was talking about to actually using the tool. So my name is Steve Grise. I used to work at Esri for a long time and was involved a lot in data models and this move towards templates. And now I work on projects, a lot of local government utilities and other projects that I work on with a small business I started about 3 years ago. So when we talk to people about this, or a lot of the project work I'm involved in, people kind of like the idea of the apps. They see a lot of value in it. But the biggest question really is, how am I going to get my data into this thing? And there are some challenges with doing it. And pretty simply, you know, as far as a simple way of looking at it, is you can use the geoprocessing tools in ArcGIS, and you can use FME or the data interop extension. And of course, data interop's part of the geoprocessing environment, so all these things, it's pretty easy to intermix them. And actually in my work, I do quite a bit of a mix of, sometimes I'll do geoprocessing scripts and sometimes I'll do work with FME. If you're just getting started on this, so the suggestion is it's pretty good to consider FME or data interop in this approach, because you don't have to be a programmer. What I've noticed is that a lot of people with GIS in their job titles aren't actually programmers, and so they need a tool that's a little bit easier for them to work with, and actually more sustainable than a code that, you know, some script that somebody wrote a few years ago. It's actually a nice visual environment to work in. And it's great because it supports many different formats too, so whether you're working from Excel or shape files or file geodatabase or whatever your source data set is in, it'll work just fine to use FME to pull data out and put it into this local government model. There's some examples coming. That's what Steve MacCabe will get to in a few minutes. But you can also think about how you can automate processes to really put some machinery in place between your editing and publishing environments. Just to give a little more detail on that, so basically, strategy-wise, you could think about your source data on the left-hand side and your target maps and geodatabase on the right-hand side. And like Scott talked about, some people may just go for the full adoption of the model and they might do a one-time migration. In the short run, though, what I've been seeing more of is people that are more kind of doing this kind of adopt and publish, or they go to the publishing side and they get some great value out of some new web apps and some new ways of presenting things and getting more useful information into the hands of users. But they're still going to take quite a long time to move their maintenance environment along and sort of get it up to that same level. And that's a pattern I've been seeing a lot. And it's what I'll show you in a City of Austin example here kind of follows that second pattern. But pretty much from an FME or data interop standpoint, you'd build those same tools and just make decisions about how and when you want to run them. So the first example I want to get into, I just want to give you 3 quick examples here to help get you thinking about approaches. And it seems like a lot of folks have already been using these tools, so I'll try and throw in some best practices and some ideas around that for you. And for those that haven't seen it, we'll slow down just a little bit and talk about the basics of the user interface and how to use it. So one of the approaches here that I'd suggest is a good idea is to consider using an approach where you clip the source data set. So in this project that I did with some Austin data, I was trying to take advantage of one of the base maps. And what I did is I picked a representative area, and I didn't want to load all of the data for the whole city. So what we're looking at here in FME Workbench is a series of shape files on the left-hand side. That's what the existing data is in. And on the right-hand side, I just want to do some work to output some new features. In this case, I'm really just going to focus on the bike routes. So while this thing, I'm just going to run it, and I'll explain a little bit about while it's running. So what we're doing here in this particular case, we're actually running a reproject. So on the left-hand side is the source data, the target data is on the right. These blue things in the middle in FME are transformers. And basically all I'm doing here is I'm reprojecting the source data into the Web Mercator or the 3857 projection. And then I'm running a clipper operation. What I did is I have another feature that I put in here, which is a sort of an area around downtown Austin that I want to do my work in. So what FME was doing while I was explaining that was it was running through, and it read in 380. Sorry, where is the reading part? It read in almost 4,000 bike routes, one clip feature, and it wrote out about 380. So basically what I'm doing overall across the city of Austin is I'm reducing this down to a smaller size data set, and it takes a little while to get this stuff dialed in. One of the approaches I took on this project is all my other mapping files and my other tools all work off of the output of these shape files, and all I have to do is repoint them to a different directory to reload the whole database, so I don't have to make a lot of changes in the tools. So that's a pretty quick example. The whole idea with this idea of projecting and clipping is to save time while refining your tools and getting your loading process right. It does take a little bit of time to get all the fields and all the values and everything looking just right, and you may find that you want to make some more significant changes to the data as you go through, and I'll show you an example of that in a minute. So a second example is a schema mapper, and you might be able to see on the right hand side here a little dialog that has the source road class has integers for the road classification for the streets in the city of Austin, And the target model has things like local roads and ramps and minor arterials. And this is a classic sort of thing that we all face in moving data from one place to another. So we're all pretty familiar with using Excel and doing source target mappings and those sorts of things. And what I'm going to do here is just use an Excel spreadsheet, and it's actually got what's the source feature class and what's the attribute name, what's the values that we have here, and what do we want to map those into. And actually what I've done in here is I put together several different ones. One for my facility types like colleges and things. They're supposed to go into a subtype field that's an integer value. And another one I'm doing here with land use codes as well. So imagine on your project you could just assemble a set of spreadsheets like you probably do for data migration already, sort of source target mapping stuff. Just imagine putting together and having somebody lay these out and spend some time putting this together. And it takes a fair bit of expertise in the data and that sort of thing. But once we get that loaded up and running, it's actually pretty straightforward to use that in FME. So let me just switch over here to a second mapping file that I've got here. And essentially what we're doing here now in this, we've got a schema mapper here for facility sites. And we've also got, oops, I went the wrong one, sorry. And we've also got one up here for the road. So here's the street feature class, the shape file that's coming in. Here's the schema mapper that's the transformer. And this is how I set it up. It's pretty easy. I just tell it which spreadsheet to use, and I do a little bit to map the fields in to say use this field and use that column out of the source spreadsheet. And then essentially what we're going to do is load this up into road center lines. You might be familiar with this already, but you can see on the right hand side a lot of these attributes are green, and those are ones that we've matched or ones that are going to get values, and you can see some red values here as well. So it's kind of neat in FME because you can get a very good picture of what's going to be loaded, what's matching, what's not matching, and make sure visually that you've got a good sense of that. And you can also see here that I've connected these up. Sometimes I call this string art, but I've connected up things like my from address range on the left hand side, or my from and to addresses on the left and right sides here, just by connecting the lines. And there's other ways we can do that with transformers as well, but you can see it's a pretty handy visual environment. So if you know that your full street name got cut off in the shapefile translation somewhere, you can just map that over to full name by dragging that over. So that's a couple of quick examples there. The main point on that one was actually that schema mapper and using an Excel spreadsheet to do the mapping. And so I think that makes it a lot easier and a lot easier to handle that, and lots of people can manage that in a spreadsheet and hand it off to somebody who's got some more expertise on the FME side for doing some of that work. Now my third example is a little bit more advanced one, and basically the idea with this is you can see on the example of the community maps or topographic base map down here in the bottom right a number of different green areas. So there's actually some parks, and there's a fort, and there's some other government and commercial kind of activities going on in this waterfront area. And one of the big things about the base maps and the information model is getting to a feature class is called facility sites, which is a set of polygons that represent those things. Now you may already have a bunch of those things in your community, but what I noticed in the city of Austin is that they didn't really have many of these. They had a few of them, but not many. So what I tried to do in this particular example is I tried to use land use in my FME process as a way to dissolve the land use and actually make that work a little bit, give me a starting point at least for this. So again, what I did here is I started with the city's land use data set, the shapefile here from 2008. Again, I did the schema mapper. This is the thing that's doing the mapping between the city land use codes and the types of things that I want to see in the geodatabase. Whenever I get a match on those things, I want to route all these through to the dissolver. So you can imagine this sort of like a dissolve function in ArcGIS geoprocessing. Essentially what it's going to do is take all the adjacent polygons and try to lump them together and make larger polygons. And FME has lots of different transformers that can do much more complicated type of analysis or sophisticated type of analysis than you might expect. And so just like things like adding a new attribute or doing the schema mapper or just doing something very simple, there's also some very sophisticated transformers in here that you can use. So in this case I won't run it because it's probably better to show you the result than to explain it. So this is the area that I had in downtown Austin that I was working on. And a couple of the things that are interesting here is the University of Texas at Austin is in the downtown area. That's sort of the pink area up above, and this brown area down below is actually the state capitol. So if we zoom in a little bit, I can show you data-wise what's actually happened here. And essentially what we've done now is we've got a facility site layer here that's showing at 1K, and this has got some of the values that I just inserted here. Steve ran it, and it's a polygon, and it's a government and military type. If we go and look at this one next door, the pink stuff here is actually going to show up as a commercial and retail type facility. So anyways, like I said, in Austin, I didn't have a great starting point for those facility sites, and I suspect a number of you will have that same challenge base mapping wise. So it's just a suggestion to you that you could use the FME to try dissolving or try some other methods as a way to actually start putting those things together, and then you could add the names and you could do other things to them, either using the FME or maybe in a more manual way. So what I want to do is share a little bit now just about best practices, or try to summarize that a little bit. So for initial loading, I'd suggest if you start small, pick a representative area. In this case, I had some water, I had some government, I had some other kinds of facilities and other things going on in this downtown area. I clipped that. You need to do a lot of testing with the maps, like for instance those facility sites. The vegetation I didn't really like that much. The contours I struggled with. So if you can start working on that, and like you saw I had several different FME mapping files, if you can break it down into some smaller chunks, it'll really help you with loading and reloading the data. And then finally, once you get that all dialed in, you need to think about how you're going to automate that, especially in that sort of ongoing publishing kind of environment. And so you might just set up the FME mapping files as a Windows process that runs once in a while. You might run it on demand sometimes, like once a week when you feel like the data is ready. And then the final thing, which is a sort of new pattern for us, is working locally and then copying the information over to the cloud. So you can imagine in this scenario that we, instead of having a file geodatabase on the right-hand side, like I was writing to, we actually want to push those things to ArcGIS Online. And today that's sort of a copy, or a sort of build and publish kind of environment with ArcGIS Online. But I think that'll advance over time. But you can see there's a number of other options too. You can actually publish to FME server. Microsoft and others have different technologies as well for publishing the data out. And you can also see there's a few commercial solutions that are starting to emerge in this area too, that may actually provide those hosting facilities and the ArcGIS and other knowledge that you may want to take advantage of too. Now the real twist in this as well is that you can run FME itself in the cloud, and of course your source data these days can be in the cloud too. So there's a lot of different ways that you can imagine using the cloud in this environment, and for now I think that pattern of build it locally and then push to the cloud is sort of the pattern most people will adopt. But it'll be interesting to see as all of these things evolve how far people take them. So with that said, I'd like to turn it back over to Steve MacCabe, and we'll continue on. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Steve. Thanks for that. Okay, I'll make myself presenter here. All right, so we're back into another poll question. I'll launch that. And this question here is, which maps and apps are most interested to you? Now, you've seen Scott go through some of those examples in there, and we're throwing up some ideas here for people to select, see what's most interesting to them. And it's a multiple choice, so you can select more than one. But I see a very even spacing across the land records, water utilities, planning, and public safety, where pretty well half of the audience is interested. Land records is pulling ahead now. And elections is down at about a quarter of the people are interested in seeing that. So I'll just give it a couple more seconds. Got about 70% of you have voted. Anybody else in there hasn't voted? Please submit your vote. Okay, so I'm going to close that now. Thanks everyone for taking part in that. And I'll share that up with you. So you can see here, yeah, we've got land records. Looks like it's the leading candidate. And this is interesting, Scott. You may have some comments on this. We're going to be showing a couple of elections examples here coming up, and we're wondering what the next kind of templates we're going to look at. So that might give you something.
Yeah, for sure. That's great.
Yeah. Okay, I'll hide that now. Thanks again, everybody. Okay. away. Okay, so we got about 15 minutes left, so let's see what we can get done here. So let's look at some examples. We're going to first go through a bit of the technology. So as I think we've iterated a few times, it really doesn't matter which choice you want to go with here. You can make use of the example templates we're going to be utilizing today. And as Steve mentioned, you work with many different formats. So you may have your data in a CAD file and you're looking to move to the local government, or you may have it in another GIS or shape files that you're wanting to move into the geodatabase file format for the local government. You know, within your workspaces, you can add in intelligence for data validations. You can do coordinate system transformations on the fly, and it's all about matching your source data up to the data model of the local government. And Scott also brought up the ArcGIS Resource Center. On there, if you do the search for FME, you'll find a couple of entries on the elections polling places that we've visited, and we have some more coming in the near future. But we invite you to visit the Resource Center and have a look at these templates. They will link you to an article on FMEpedia website that will give you the contents for the either if you're going with the data interop, then you'll be able to download the ETL toolbox to be able to plug into your system. Otherwise, you'll be able to, if you're using the FME desktop or if you extended ArcGIS with FME desktop, you'll be able to download the FME template, and that will contain sample data for you to use. Instructions here on the website. If I click on this link, it will bring up, well, I'm not getting what I want, but it will go to the FMEpedia page and we'll see a lot more detailed of instructions on what you need to look at in the workspace. And here's an example of the election results. And I'm just going to pull up the beginning workspace of this. We've got the election polling places that we start with. This one here. And I'll just switch gears here and open up FME. So this is the workspace we've put together for Esri and the local government initiative. And in here you see kind of a typical workspace that this kind of complexity is pretty good to deal with. But in essence, we're on the left-hand side here. We got our source data. We're our big attributes here are the attribute creators, where we've got the OS username being pulled in, and then where's our so this one's pretty straightforward. We're really just taking the polling places locations. There's a spreadsheet in the background that ties the precincts, the areas, to a polling place point feature, and we're building that up. And if we run this, get out of this again, I've just run it here recently, and I think for the sake of time I'm going to not run it here, and I'll just show you the results in ArcGIS. In essence, this is what you're going to end up with the sample data. So you're going to be able to see, if we click on one of these features, I ran it there this morning, not too long ago, just before the webinar started. And you know, we've moved that data, however it looked like, you know, could be your source data, into this local government model, ready for the Maps and Apps polling places web app. So we'll go back to the slideshow here. So the template, the geodatabase file that we're generating from there, can be done through the ArcGIS. You've got an XML file that's available for download from Esri Resource Center, and then you can generate that file, populate that as you wish, either from the FME workspace or the spatial ATL tool. Okay, Scott. So the second part of that was the first part was the polling places, and we've also got a template up there for the election results. And Scott, if you want to have a few words on that.
Yeah, so the goal here, you know, many of you may be familiar, on election nights you've got results that are streaming in from voters, and they're being tabulated by clerks or other election offices, and most of the time those, you know, come out of your tabulation systems and spreadsheets. And so the goal here was to help people take those spreadsheets, merge them with their precinct geometry or other geography that represents the voting area in their community, and then ultimately provide a really focused application that represents your election results on election night. And so the work that we did here takes spreadsheets, the results that are coming in, and ultimately produces the layers you need to publish this election results app like I showed earlier. And that's really what we're all driving towards, right? I mean, we want these things to be set up. We want the data to be massaged in such a way that you can provide real simple, focused apps to constituents in your community like this election results app.
Yeah. And also another area that we're working on, Steve showed some of that in his examples that he worked with, and this is the community maps and topo base maps. So we've got some starts of having some more entries up on the ArcGIS Resource Center, which will link back to FMEpedia that will help you, load your topos into the local government model so that you can take advantage of that rich looking map here, Scott, as well. You might have some comments to add.
Yeah, Steve alluded to this a little bit when he showed you some of those transformers and things for the base mapping product he did in Austin. But one of the interesting things is that the Community Maps Initiative now is organized and aligned around the local government information model, and we've been working on this for quite some time. But you'll notice that the ArcGIS for Local Government solution includes about 9 different base maps that leverage these features, and you can then publish those base maps and use them in a variety of applications. And they range, like this example, from campus features that are, you gather on a university or on one of your major facilities, all the way up to the rich multi-scale base maps that you use in the Community Maps Initiative. So the goal is not just to help you organize your content for business applications, but also to produce these real rich multi-scale base maps that you'll use in your web apps and mobile applications across your organization.
Great, thanks, Scott. So just to kind of close up here, what you've seen today is, how the FME technology makes it easier to adopt the ArcGIS local government. That is what we want you to take away from here. And if you're thinking about going to the local government, then you really want to have a look at some of the offerings that we have here. Talk with with Scott, or come back to us here at Safe Software, and just see how we can maybe help you guys move from your source data into the local government model. And again, if you're a Twitter user, there you go, some hashtag for you that you can tweet out. Steve or Scott, I invite you. Anything else you want to add to the summary and closing?
No, I think it was great. Thanks a lot for the time. I think we're really excited about the partnership with Safe Software, and we'll continue to to drive out additional workspaces that help people migrate their content into the solution.
Thanks, Scott. Okay. So one last poll question we got here. Go here. So I'm just going to launch this one. Give me a second. Just wondering if anybody might be interested in some chance for one of the 25 seats, free seats of online FME training. So this will be online training that you'll take from your office or your home, and you'll be using a remote desktop system on the cloud nonetheless, and we'll have an instructor, live instructor, will take you through the training material. So if you're interested there, that'll be great. So we've got lots of people saying they're interested, so that's great, and they're being polite. It's a yes, please, so that's really nice to see. We got a polite crowd today. It's actually funny. Some webinars we do this question just like this, and you'll get the yeses and nos, not the yes, the no thanks. So, okay, guys, thanks for putting your vote in there. I'll close that. And if you didn't get a chance to vote here, we still will send out an email with information on how you can look at training. And next, we'll go into a little bit of the upcoming webinars. If anybody's interested, we have lots of webinars on the go every week. We got a desktop and a server, a desktop introduction and a server that runs monthly, amongst all our other offerings of webinars. So just check in there for any of that additional information. And just so everybody knows, Steve and Scott and I will be sticking around for a few minutes, probably till about 5 minutes past the hour, to take on any of your questions. And as we do that, I will see if Mita's got any questions that come up that might be worth talking about. Mita?
Yeah, Steve, we did have a few questions come in during the webinar. One of them that came in was referring to the first or second examples in the data interoperability examples that were done. Question was, in the examples, the destination already had the required fields present on the reader side as well, so they already matched. So what can somebody do if they didn't have those fields on the reader side, but they needed to populate them on the writer? So attribute transformation is one of the things people do most with FME. It's one of the core parts of our product. My recommendation is to go to the transformer gallery story inside of FME. It's on the bottom left usually of Workbench. And go to the strings category. There's all kinds of attribute manipulating transformers that you can use. For example, if you wanted to split one attribute on your source side to map to two attributes on your destination side, there's something called an attribute splitter, which lets you split an attribute based on a common delimiter. You simply need to rename some attributes to match your destination side. There's an attribute copier or an attribute renamer. So just a couple of quick examples there, but definitely check out that strings folder inside of the transformer gallery. Thanks, Steve.
All right. Thank you very much, Mita. Okay, so yeah, Steve, Scott, anything you want to add in here on contact information or anything?
No, I think that's great. We look forward to the feedback.
Okay, great.
Thanks everyone for attending.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for taking time out of your busy day, and I hope everybody's found this beneficial, and we'll talk to you soon.